Our guest contributor from Legal Sports Report today is Matthew Waters. He joins us now here on the show. We got some investor news and some stock news on the different companies and how the tax rate in Illinois has affected some of it, maybe surprising some numbers for you as well. Let's bring in Matt. Matt, great to catch up with you here again. Let's get started with Penn Entertainment, a company that has certainly changed hands, to say the least, over the last year or so. Let's get the latest update from you. How are they doing?
Penn has not been doing terrific, Craig. We've talked at length about their international or their interactive losses, and they finally had a shareholder come out and write a letter that really took them to task for it. It was the Dunrail Group is the name of the investor, and Will Wyatt, he's a managing partner, and he penned the letter. And after the letter came out, Penn's stock price jumped 20% on Friday, Craig. It traded at almost 4 times its average trading volume. So basically the market got behind this and said, yeah, that's what we're trying to say. And what Wyatt said was basically Penn has failed at sports betting. In so many words, that's what it came down to. And he highlighted the purchase of Barstool and how even though, about a year into it, it was clear that this wasn't going the way that they thought it would, they still went through and bought the rest of Barstool, and then months later turned it around and sold it back to Portnoy for $1 that cost them like $800 million around there. Non-cash impairments, of course, but it's still on your balance sheet. It's still not what you want to do. It's still not great business to have your acquisitions turn up like that. Then he mentioned theScore. And if you remember theScore, they are a sports media outlet bigger than SportsCenter and ESPN in Canada, but they spent $2.1 billion on theScore, Craig, and theScore didn't have the numbers to support that kind of purchase price at the time. And now we're on to ESPN Bet, and ESPN Bet has already lost like a lot more than Penn guided to. And so you have this situation where Penn, before they got into this interactive business, they have a portfolio of more than 40 retail casinos. And they know what they're doing in the retail casino place. They have a good loyalty program. They know how to run those local casinos. And that is being completely overshadowed by the substantial losses they are now facing from interactive. And Wyatt basically said, when is this going to end? He even questioned if the acquisition of theScore, which Penn had said was for their technology, if that was necessary. And he said, quote, had a digitally native and more experienced leadership been at the helm, shareholders have to wonder if this could have been done in a more cost-effective manner from the onset. And then he jumps into taking some shots at how much CEO Jay Snowden has made, which is almost $100 million over the past 4 years. And he's basically saying, for what? Why is he getting this kind of compensation? So it's interesting right now. Basically, it came down to them saying Wyatt suggested potentially selling that portfolio of retail casinos. I don't know how many buyers there are out there right now for 40 land-based casinos, Craig. That's not something that you just decide to do. So Penn is going to remain an interesting story through the football season, right? We know that they're waiting for the parlays to improve. We know that they're working on a whole bunch of stuff right now. So we need to see some kind of turnaround quickly from Penn on these interactive losses if they want the stock price to not be sincerely and severely impacted by that. But the market absolutely loved what Will Wyatt had to say.
Yeah, it's fascinating conversation for all of the sports books, and in particular the stock prices. I guess they do get affected when the tax rate goes up, as we're finding out with FanDuel and DraftKings, and I want to get into that here a little bit more. I know that there's a CFO transition going on at FanDuel as well, and on top of it, how did the news last week that came in that Illinois was raising the tax rate on sports books to 40%, how did that affect the stock market and their pricing?
Yeah, obviously they dipped. It's not good news when you see that your tax rate is going to go up that much. And the shares started to dip on DraftKings and FanDuel even before it was certain that it was happening. The Senate basically made the move, and the market said, okay, that's it, it's happening, and they started to take the hit from there. But we've gotten a couple of analyst notes since then that are suggesting that the hit will not be as big as maybe it seems right now, and there are different ways to mitigate that. These guys are good at cutting costs where they need to and trying to make money. And I think without leaving Illinois, they're going to be able to figure it out. And one note specifically from Barry Jonas of Truist, he does a look each month at what's going on in iGaming in the US. And he came out with a ranking system on sports betting operators. And tier one was DraftKings and FanDuel naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And then he skipped tier two and went to tier three, which is BetMGM, Caesars, and ESPN Bet. And he said, note that we skipped tier two. We don't think any operator in the space qualifies for that standing with how much white space there is between DraftKings and FanDuel and the rest of the field. Yeah, it is interesting because at some point that should change, right? And Barry got into that because when you look at BetMGM, when you look at Caesars, when you look at ESPN Bet, they have those retail database, player databases. And so at some point, when all of the technology should finally be on a level playing field, that's when Barry said, we could start to see some of that share shift. And maybe there would be more of a legitimate tier two. Maybe there could be somebody coming in to challenge that tier one. I thought it was interesting to add ESPN Bet into that third tier, piggybacking off of what we just spoke about. But there is still so much potential for ESPN Bet, Craig. ESPN has been bragging about just how they've been crushing it in digital recently. They had 24.7 million visitors on the ESPN app in April. They are adding all of these people and places, and their social platforms saw like 184.9 million users. And they have under 700,000 active bettors right now on ESPN Bet. So there is still a lot of potential to grow for ESPN Bet as long as they nail that integration. I can't even guess how many times I've said that now. They have to nail that integration. As far as FanDuel with the CFO transfer, the timing was a little interesting because they listed in New York back in January. And then on May 31st, they made that their primary listing instead of the London listing. And in that release, they also said, oh, by the way, our CFO, he can't come to America with us. He has family back there. So effective immediately, there's a new CFO. And that was, the timing was strange. I think personally that could have been presented in a different way. But overall, that shouldn't be too crazy. The gentleman is coming from within Flutter already. So he's familiar with the landscape. Shouldn't be that big of a hit. But yeah, we are still watching to see what exactly these stocks are going to do when the higher tax rates kick in.
Yeah, and I think that the conversation, my takeaway from you, Matt, is maybe a little different than some others. I don't know that there ever will be a tier two in the sports betting space. I don't think there's a guarantee of that actually happening. If you just think about other commercial operators in non-sports betting venues, it may just be the case that FanDuel and DraftKings just dominate forever. Anyway, great to see you, Matt. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.